Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our, well, I don't know, what do we call this committee now? Rules and Appointments, Ways and Means, Personnel Meeting, all combined. A reminder to silence your cell phones. First order of business, we have the minutes before us. I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion, any questions, any corrections? Seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Minutes approved. Next, we have public comment, limited public comment on any agenda item. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, we will move on. We have a request, but it's not an action request for our rules and regulations. In your packet is our rules and regulations with some minor changes noted. I would ask you to consider these over the next month. If you have any questions or changes or recommendations, reach out to Administrator Murphy, and we'll take those up at our next monthly meeting. Excuse me. Next is board appointments. And we have one opening on the both. Dave, we have two committees are still functioning in parallel now. Is that right? The solid waste and materials management. Okay. So we have one appointment to each. Yeah. Or anyways, it's self-evident anyways. And now we don't have to we still have to recommend this forward to our meeting tomorrow, right? Yes, Commissioner Van Doren.
We do, but correct me if I'm wrong, we have two separate boards. You have a board for solid waste and you have a board for material management.
Until the materials management kicks in, you have to have dueling boards that should carry on for the better part of this year. But if solid waste meets at the call of the chair at this time.
Okay, so then the motion is in order to recommend this forward to the full board, the appointment of Matthew Tomaszewski from the city of Adrian to both, and we might as well do both of them at the same time.
How many members are there on that?
I think
9, isn't there?
7 or 9.
Let me see.
There,
Yeah, it's 11 members on materials management and 9 on solid waste.
Mr. Chairman, this is the substitution for the city manager for the city, Greg Elliott.
I think that's correct. So do we have a motion then to recommend this forward to the full board?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Support.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Thank you. Now Administrator Murphy will take us through the employment changes.
The employment changes report is in your file, and if you have any questions, I can try to answer those for our newer commissioners. This is just a record of the new hires in the last month and the terminations in the last month, as well as people who may have transferred from one department to another. There's no action. It's just for your information.
Sure.
Any questions, anybody? I want to thank Administrator Murphy and her staff for this monitor. I can actually now read what's on the screen, which is a nice improvement. Next question is the unemployment insurance matter. And I turn that over to Administrator Murphy again.
This again is just for your information. We have self-funded premiums, and as you can see over the history of unemployment insurance, the amount of our claims, the total payroll, the amount of our claims, what percent of our payroll that is, and then the percentage of the premium that we assess back to the departments. And what we're doing this year is we are again assessing the 0.3% back to the departments. It is covering all of our costs that we have right now. And so if you have any questions, I will try to answer them. But at this point, this is just for your information.
Any questions on the unemployment insurance matter? Now we'll bring us to a new section. Administrator Murphy again will talk about employee anniversaries.
So one of the things that we do internally is we send out a weekly DQ to all the employees. And one of the new things that became part of that is kind of recognizing employees' years of service with the county. And when I seen this, I thought this would be a great thing for the commissioners to be able to have. It's no action, but it is a recognition of our employees, the lengths of service and the departments that they serve in. So I've included in your packet the report for January and February, where you can see we actually have employees celebrating anniversaries in January of 35 years with the county, 30 years with the county, and it goes all the way down to a 1-year anniversary. And the same thing for February. We see employees as much as 25 and 26 years, all the way down to 1 year. And I think it just goes to attest to the employees that we have here, and it gives you the ability to see the longevity that we have and the dedication that our employees are showing to the county. So it's just more for your information, and no action is needed.
Thank you for this. I think it's a worthy addition and appreciate the folks who've stuck with us for so long. Commissioner Ongst.
I'd just like to say thank you for doing that report. I think that's important to see.
And
Yes, Commissioner Van Dorn.
I'd just like to say congratulations to all those employees and thank them for their due diligence with county government.
And hopefully it's an indication of us being a good place for
Yeah.
people to work and make a career, because that's certainly our intent.
Right.
Any other comments before we move on? Next, we have a request for tuition reimbursement. As you may know, our employees are eligible under certain terms for tuition reimbursement, and I think we have a request for that. Administrator Murphy?
You do. This is a request coming out of my office. I do have an employee who is looking to move from their current bachelor's degree to a master's degree in accounting. I had the employee explain to me their goals and aspirations with that degree, as well as a detailed explanation of how the classes that they are looking at will be beneficial to the county. These courses are going to be online. The total cost of reimbursement will be $834.20 per class. And there is a recommendation coming from that division of my office that this employee be able to move forward with this program. So my recommendation is to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approve the tuition reimbursement application in the reimbursable amount of $834.20 per course upon meeting all requirements outlined in the tuition reimbursement policy.
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Commissioner Collins?
I haven't been all the way through reading this, but how many classes are there that this person will take?
Currently 2 classes, and then we're going to go from there and see how that works, because this
Yeah.
person will be taking these classes while continuing to work full time as the county. So
So it'll be ongoing until.
there's a strong possibility there will be more coming.
Any other questions? If not, anybody signifying support, say aye, please.
Hi.
Opposed, same sign. Matter carries. Next, we turn to finance reports. Administrator Murphy.
All right. Again, for our newer commissioners, those of you that have been with us for a while understand this, but for January, February, and March, the finance reports are going to kind of go back and forth as we are making year-end adjustments. Our auditors will be on scene at the end of March, and we may see just a few more adjustments after that. But for now, I'm going to go through what we are looking at on the general fund income statement. As we look at the general fund, we can see that revenues to date, or as of January 23rd, I should say, not to date, are $643,775, with expenditures at, sorry, $2,857,731. And this, you're going to see this as a normal thing as we move into the year, where you're going to see an excess in expenditures over revenues. And these things will right them side up as we continue to move on through the year. Looking at the fund equity changes report, when we're going to start with the fund category governmental funds, which is where your general fund is located. Again, revenues of $643,000 to expenditures of $2.8 million. As we move on to the fund type special revenue funds, We are seeing their year-to-date revenues of 1.1 million to expenditures of almost 700,000. Moving on to the fund type debt service funds, we have revenues of 300,000 to $0 in expenditures. Moving on to fund type capital project funds, we have year-to-date revenues of 883,000 compared to year-to-date expenditures of 46,800. Moving on to the fund type capital project funds special assessment districts. We see revenues of 172,000 to expenditures of just over $1,000. So the total for all of your governmental funds is 3.1 million in revenue to 3.6 million in expenditures. As you move on to your fund category proprietary funds, specifically your enterprise funds, you have a total revenues of 1.2 million compared to expenditures of just over 1.2 million. Your internal service fund is showing revenues of 33,000 to expenditures of almost 8,000. The total for your proprietary funds is showing 1.2 million in revenues to almost 1.3 in expenditures. So the grand total of all of your funds as of January 23rd, 2025 show revenues of 4,400,000 compared to expenditures of 4,900,000. I will try to answer any questions you may have.
Any question on the finance reports? Seeing none, we will move on to the next part of our presentation. This topic of this Better Brain Health Program, which we're going to hear a presentation on now, has been discussed with us from Administrator Murphy for a number of weeks now, and we had an extensive discussion about it at the criminal justice meeting where we heard a lot of testimony from our department heads that this program could be of great value to them. And so I'm looking forward to hearing this presentation. With us, we have Dr. Joel Robertson from Robertson Brain Health. Can you turn your microphone on, please? Just press the button there on the. Thank you.
When you look at the number of slides, don't panic. I can go through them fast. Well, a couple of you, Harry and Kim, have heard me before, but the rest of you, I'll get to bore you today. I want to talk to you about a new way of approaching health and well-being programs, and give you a little bit of data who we are. As an agency, we're a preventative health program. We support programs such as your EAP programs, crisis incidents, things of that nature. We're also heavy data, so that when you want to know, do we have a good sheriff department, we can compare you with 70 or 80 different sheriff departments, et cetera, to be able to see gaps in strengths. So not only do I have a medical degree, but now I'm going to scare you off, but a PhD in predictive analytics and AI. So I love data because it tells a story. Robertson Health contains 4 companies. Robertson Brain Health, which is the part that would work with your government employees, is our profit division. We work with professional athletes, sometimes successfully, sometimes not. Red Wings are one of ours, and sometimes we have a good day, sometimes we don't. But we work with a lot of Fortune 500 companies and government employees. Robertson Research Institute is our 501c3 public charity. We set that up and we self-fund that, even though it's a public charity. And there's different projects that we've looked at. The first one was 1.8 billion people who will never see a doctor. And this is where we work with Protect the Protectors, which works with law enforcement and first responders. Robertson Institute is where I've hung my hat. I've always done concierge medicine for family and behavioral medicine. And then we also have a family foundation that is a private charity that works in the area of some of the underserved, underprivileged. So those are who we are. If you look at this story of who we are and whatever, I think there's 2 things I want you to look at. One of them is we spend a significant amount of time doing research. We are a very heavy research organization. We still do research. We created program and technology to be able to implement our programs, and then we roll them out. The question you have to ask, because I think there's a lot of people in this field that I would not consider that I respect, and I think you need to put your glasses on and look closely at us and anybody else that might provide health and wellness, especially to your staff. They better be knowledgeable and know what they're doing, because it's a field that sometimes could be dangerous. So as far as our technology, we won Microsoft Healthcare Company of the Year. We finished top 5 in the world. So that's how well we did with technology. Our behavioral medicine, we won the best predictive medicine, behavioral medicine program in 34 countries at the Arab Innovation Award. We are also the first and only company in the United States that Blue Cross Blue Shield has recognized for preventative medicine. They do not reimburse us for that because that's not how they bill, but they will recognize us as a program that has met the standards that would be necessary. You're going to hear about 2 projects. One is the BRAIN project. That includes most of our city and county government. And then when you look over at Protect the Protectors, it's a not-for-profit. Our company has been dedicated to the law enforcement and Protect the Protectors, and we invest $296 per person from our pocket to help subsidize that. And we do that because we just believe that they are in the front line. They provide a significant amount of our freedoms that we have to be able to do what we do. So we kind of want to pay back. So that's where we go there. Not that we charge government too much, because I came from a family. My father was a mayor for 27 years. So I've been at a few of these meetings and left town early so he could get reelected. So what has improved when we look at mental health is when you look at it, you know, we've gotten good at putting in employee assistance programs and things like that. We've done really well with that. But what we haven't done is we've dealt with the reactive stresses. We haven't prevented them. And that's what we do. We are a preventative. And what that helps you with is attracting people and retaining them. Because if you're not taking care of the mental health and you're not taking care of physical health, they'll tend to move on. So what do we know about health and well-being about government employees? I'm going to throw a couple of stats. I told you we were there. So let's look at this for a second. And when you talk about RBH Ags, that's 18,000 people. We had a good break at when COVID came around to be able to say what happened before and what happened after. And you'll see some of these statistics here, and you'll see RBH Ags is about 15,000 people here. And then what has happened to them in the last 5 years. And you look at that, and you're seeing the feelings of stress up. You're seeing alcohol to self-medicate. Substances went up. In Michigan, we're not just a Michigan-based company, but most of our states have legalized marijuana, which has caused that to go up. But you look at the medication for anxiety, depression, and even especially poor deteriorating memory. In September of 2014, AMA decided and made the statement that dementia, we're not talking about Alzheimer's, we're not talking about stroke-induced, is a preventable disease. And yet it's on the rise because of our stresses. Then you look at what are the impacts that it's had on dealing with family life and things of that nature. And you'll just see harmonizing is a term that we use of I just don't care anymore. I've given up hope. So you just see some of our trends that are happening. And then that's what they report. But when we look at it and we say, where are the major factors? And this is using predictive analytics. It's obviously anxiety, depression, and we have behavioral health. Those are some things that are very significant that we should address. This is a comparison. This is where we won our awards. The green bar says if you are under that bar, you won't develop a disease. Green to yellow means you're at risk to develop it. Yellow to red means you will probably be at a significant risk. If you're over red, then for cardiac, just get your stent whenever you can, when it's convenient, because you're going to get a heart attack. So it's one of those predictors, and you notice it, and you can see here where government executives and government employees, as well as law enforcement, it just gives us some of the standards of what they're dealing with. And so these are some of the data that's important. When you look at what do we know about life? We know that exercise would actually improve us, and yet you look at it and you see 61% of employees don't. People don't exercise enough that will even do that. So that brings up some questions. If we know this, why? So let's look at traditionally, and I'm using other people's stats of how well have health and wellness programs done in the past. So you need to ask two questions. One, will people use it? And number two, is it going to be effective at bringing about a change? Because offering it, if they're not going to use it, doesn't do anything. So if you look at the studies from CDC, 71% of the people know they have an issue. 40% of our employees are battling burnout. It will cost the agency that employs them $1,400 a year for them who don't use well-being. But when you offer it, only 23% will sign up for it. And of them, only 48% will utilize it, which means 11% of your employees will use your well-being program. And those are actually the people who are healthiest. So when you look at that, you're going, okay, unhealthy employees are least likely to use it. And then you look at some of the other stats. 60% of our diseases are preventable. I told you about the Alzheimer's, and 80% of our heart diseases preventable. So what do we need? What do we need to be able to address this? We refer to as you need a new school of thought. You need to look at this very differently. And the new school of thought from our standpoint says, number one, why do you care what you should do? Wouldn't it be more important to know what you will do? I remember when I was in med school, somebody came and said stress reduction, and she was teaching us just tighten your toes, relax, doing a progressive relaxation. Got to my calves and I'm like so stressed out. I'm saying, this is crazy. This is stressing me out. Why? I'm an expedition climber. I don't stress up by curling around up by a fire and reading a book. I go out and do something threatening my life to relax. So you have to know what's going on. So what you will do. Education. That's what we do because we don't have an option. We educate about diabetes, we educate about heart disease, but it hasn't changed people's responses. And part of it is people need immediate feedback. If you say you do this for 2 years, you'll get better. You probably won't make it that long. And then people, unfortunately, seek their own research on the internet. And being a statistics guy, I'm a little cynical there because it's like they don't even know how to validate their research. And so they end up doing what is called a marketing program. And they don't look at what really works. And so ultimately, you're going to hear me talk about brain health. What do? So we use artificial intelligence, predictive analytics, population grouping, and inference to be able to think about this. If we could predict the diseases, moods, or behavior you're going to get, and be able to prevent them by knowing exactly what you will do, by giving you a personalized program, that could be pretty cool. And that's the world we live in. And if you look at this, let's talk about this for a second. Why are we a brain health program? If you look at our brain is like the hard drive. And if you look at our health and our relationships and our performance, and we believe that all employees not only have to improve their performance at work, but their relationships and their overall health is going to make them better employees. And so we talk about it being in the middle, and we say not only should we optimize our brain health, but would that maximize our potential? And then it should be done not only for individual, but your group, your whole organization. So here's what we look at. Here are the diseases that are caused specifically by your brain. And you look at those, and here are our relationships. And, here's our performance. And I don't know if you look at that and see any of you in there, but I see me in there a lot. And, I get stressed out and I'll find myself probably not being attentive to the people around me who need something. And so you look at that, and those are the things that are what we have to address. So if our brain is the core to our optimal health, what do we know about our brain? And the answer is probably nothing. And that's been the hard part. If I look at what I do for a living, I have to review 60 journal articles per week to stay current on just my field. So how do you expect anybody to stay current on this stuff? It's just a fast moving pace. So we created this program that says one size fits one. And basically what it says is, how do you know what diseases, moods, and behaviors you're going to get? National Institutes of Health says there are 3 things. There's going to be your genetics, it's going to be your environment, and it's going to be your lifestyle. Those are the things that will create the diseases, moods, and behaviors. We break it down into 2 categories. We say cards you've been dealt. Some of us been dealt good cards, some of us have not. And you got your genetics and you got childhood development. Now, being a brain guy, the first 12 years of your life is going to have a significant impact on the rest of your life. If I would ask you, are you a good person? Your brain has to go in there and interpret, what am I judging against? Now, my wife came from a German Lutheran farming community where they all went to the same school and whatever. And if you would ask my wife, are you a good nurse? She'd say, I could be better. Are you a good mother? I could be better. She's an all-star at those, but why? She judges against perfection, and her also, from that background, any mistake is failure. I came from a different background. My dad was a poor hillbilly in West Virginia that left at the 8th grade education, came up, got an education, created his own company, and by 20 hired all of his family to come up and work for him. So I came from a very creative entrepreneurial. So you ask me, are you a good father? And I'm like, well, hell yeah, I'm better than the average guy most of the time. So different way that the brain is interpreted. So we have to look at that. And then we have, our lifestyle, our choices and things that happen. We can really focus on these areas of the choices that we make. These are things that we can absolutely change. And so we have an assessment. Basically, it's a online HIPAA compliant. It's even beyond HIPAA. It's been protected up to the Supreme Court of Michigan. It's 180 questions, but using AI, it gives us 287,000 variables. So for example, if I ask you the question, are you depressed? You know what the second most important question I need to know if you really are? Where do you live? You'll answer that differently if you're in New York City, if you're in the Midwest, if you're in California, or you're Australia. So AI comes in and says, I'm going to get all this information to figure it out. And out of that, we create this report. And everybody gets it. And it says, what's broken? What's off with me? Is it my brain chemistry? What is it? What are my risk factors? I gave you some of those health, performance, relationship risks. So you know, what do I deal with? If you're not at risk for something, then you don't need to live a lifestyle that isn't fun. And then you say, how do I fix it? We use some population grouping and what do you do, et cetera. So are we effective? So this is one of the things when you talk about inhibitors. So we do 78 inhibitors that we determine and then we come back and check. Those inhibitors might be, for example, chest pain is a cardiac or a heart or a health inhibitor. You might have scattered thinking as a performance. You might have anger as a relationship. And we come back, and the reason why we come back and check it was the first time I keynoted the American Psychiatric Association, it was on treatment failure. Their definition of treatment failure is you didn't follow the program I gave you. My definition of treatment failure is I didn't know enough about you to give you the right program. I don't know anybody that's depressed or anxious or angry that wants to be. And so the key thing is, how do we figure it out? These are the statistics after 2 years of what percentage of those inhibitors improved, which leads us into some charts that are kind of interesting. So if you look at all of our population, 18,000 people, many different places, where they started is the green bar. That's their risk factor. The blue bar is where they came in at midterm because we like to redo it if it needs to be redone. And then the purple is after 2 years. And I want you to just notice every one of those is going down. The risk factor for cardiac disease, cardiac event, obesity, diabetes, or dementia down. You look at the behavioral factors and you see all of them are down. Anxiety, look at where we're at in our society. It's super high, brought it down. You look at performance, and obviously performance, our brain never performs at 100%. We're like 50%. And so you'll see, even though they're in risk, they are being able to come down. You look at our relationship. One of the things that I love is I look at the anger, frustration that people have in relationships that affect them, and it's coming down. So these are the data points. These are the things that we use with outcomes. And then you look at the big three, which is stress, low energy, and sleep. And people are often so stressed they don't have enough energy to make any changes. And so these are some of the numbers. Now, how do our participants perceive this? We have an average of 61% reduction in inhibitors. 41% is our lowest, and that, by the way, is with dispatch. Dispatch is a very tough business, and that's our lowest. 83% of our participants, remember 11% was the standard? 83% will retake it after 2 years. So when you say you've got that many people still active at 2 years, 93% said they gained insight, 88% a healthier lifestyle, and 85% would recommend it. Now, we summarized using Chat GP what people said. And basically people say they love that our program is relatable. They love that it has a perspective shift. So they just came up with a lot of different things that we look at that says, are we doing the right thing? Now, obviously, when you do what we do, we don't hear negative comments. So there's negative ones. I don't know where they are because people just say, thanks for being here. And so we don't get it. So, you know, as a researcher, I just know the positive, but I'm sure there's negatives. Now, I want to do something here. I want to show you something. And Kim knows this one because she talked to Al Vanderberg from Kent County. So Ottawa County, Kent County, those are our counties that have been with us. And Kent County, we decided to do, did we save them any money? And this is for a Blue Cross presentation. So CDC says there's a certain cost that it has if you have a disease that it costs you every year. So for example, if you have high blood pressure, it costs you $1,450 per year that you have it. So we took our statistics and said, what's it really costing before and what's it costing after? And it looked like we saved around $29,000 per person in their lifetime. People forget that they pay off their mortgage, they pay off their houses and things of that, or their cars and stuff, put money in IRAs. They forget complacency will cost you $105,000 a year of lost income. So we took those numbers and we took Kent County, and these are Kent County's numbers. And then we said, all right, what level of heart disease do we have in the US? And what does it cost? And these are numbers from CDC. And basically heart disease costs an average of $22,000. Diabetes costs $9,600 and obesity $1,470 per year to have. It's interesting because when we did this presentation to Blue Cross, they turned around and said, you're underestimating your effectiveness, which I thought, well, that's interesting from a Blue Cross. And they said, you didn't cover prediabetes. I said, I don't have data on prediabetes. They said, we'll give it to you. So that would be nice. So when you look at this, you say, all right, we've already got the average person saves $29,000. That has nothing to do with the agency. But if you look at the agency and you look at how much it costs, what their numbers were and how much they improved, you'll see that from heart disease, diabetes, obesity, and mental health, those are the numbers that they calculated. Which if you look at it, per employee per year, if we combine both the individual and the organization, it's $1,176 in healthcare costs and lost productivity per year. For 100 employees, that's $2.7 million for the agency and $2.9 million for individuals, which is a total of $5.6 million. So healthcare costs are obviously astronomical and they have a significant impact on individuals. So the question is, can people change? Is it challenging? And I tell you, as a guy who works with that, absolutely it is challenging. And our key is to say, how do we figure out the best way to do it? So you basically, the barriers that people will look at is, you know, we've got these programs. Reactive programs don't save money. Reactive programs save lives. They're very good. They're very good from that standpoint. You have to look at it, and we work and have a fairly effective preventative program. The second thing is that cost. They don't want to go with the cost. We work with you to figure out a way to be able to work within your cost structure. You look at time. Can it be difficult? Again, our staff often is in at 4 a.m. because that's the cheapest for us to deliver a seminar. So we do whatever's best for you. And quite often, leaders sometimes just don't care. So those are the biggest barriers that we find. If you look at the program, now you're going to see a 5-year roadmap. Now we do 5-year roadmap, and the reason why is after any given time, we can discount if we know you are going to be with us in the future. But anytime you want to leave, you leave. Anytime we want to leave, we leave. Because we don't want to be in a place that either A, you don't think you're doing we're doing you a good job. So even if we discount it, we don't ask for money back. Why we go 5-year program, we usually, and we will ask you to think about it, is because we have a waiting list. And it allows us to know that we can queue up for you. But it takes about 3 years for people to make permanent changes. So if you look at all those stats, if they only do it 1 year, they're not going to be as good. So I'm just being upfront with you that if you want the biggest bang for your buck, 3 years is probably. How does it work? We start out and we like to require people to sit in and hear about us, but we will never require people to take the assessment. That is very much up to them, and we make all of our workshops. We have 6 different workshops that we go through, and we have 3 leader meetings. Leader meetings are with your management, whether it's with your sheriff department are separate, or your administrative government. And we break it down as much as possible. What did we find? How's your agency compared? And then we'll do an outcome to see, is this worth continuing? So now you look at it and say, what's it cost? And we looked at this, and Kim can certainly chime in on here. First responders, we're going to start with 11 command staff, and county would be 13 groups if you approve this. And we offer all of these different programs. And you will find that our first responder fee is $500 per person. And we make up, it's actually $296 that we make up. And with our county fee, it's $750. So those are the numbers. And then our goal is, after command staff has done it, they can make a determination to roll it out. Typically, we'll tell you with the sheriff, it's all or nothing. Because if you do a command staff and then you only do part of them, people feel resentful. And it's up to them to make the decision if they want to add their full staff later. We look at cohorts, and if it were effective, then we'd look at a second cohort of department heads to figure out from there. So, this is where it falls. This is something that you guys can think about and talk over with your administrator. But that's who we are, and that's what we do. We're passionate about what we do, and we're passionate about continuing to do research, and passionate about continuing to find out ways to engage people. Any questions?
Commissioner Collins.
No question, just a statement. I heard the presentation at a MAC conference, and all of you know my background is in law enforcement administration. And I was sold quickly on the program and wished the hell I'd had it way back when I was chief. But one of the things that also really impressed me was the sheriff he had that talked. And the sheriff not only was maybe a better salesman than him for the program, but he talked about how those people who had participated went about urging everybody else to participate. You've got to go through this program. So it became kind of a domino effect that initially those that may have been somewhat resistant were no longer resistant because the rank and file on it, their buddies, their partners, their family asked them to do it. I think it's just an incredibly great program, beneficial both for the employees as individuals, for the county in general, and certainly for this commission. I totally support it.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Commissioner Blanco.
How does it work? I know it's 1-to-1. Is that right? Versus, if all the participants were a group, but they don't go through, group exercises? Or
Yeah,
is it
so-
yeah, how does it work?
Great question. So this is an example of the assessment. The first part is, what do we find about your brain? And the next one will be, what are your risk factors? So every session, so we first start out and say there's 4 things you need to know about your brain. You got a reward center. Why will you do what you do? You have behaviors that you do. I started out in compulsive disorders and wanted to study that, because why do people keep doing either addiction or whatever? And so we talk about, interesting, when I was doing that, I found treating the drug addiction was easier than treating the drug behavior. So treating a cocaine addiction, for example, was easier than treating the sexual promiscuity, the risk-taking, because it did the same thing for the brain. So we talk about natural tendencies. What do you do naturally? And then we talk about brain chemistry, and then we talk about the lens that you see through. And what we do is everybody has this who took it, and each session we'll talk about what do you need to know, and then we'll break it down and say, brain chemistry is, by the way, the most, why do you think if you go to the doctor and you say you're anxious, what do they give you? Medication. You're depressed, medication. You have can't sleep, medication. We're not medication oriented. We're not opposed to medication. We say, you know, that's something that you may want to look at if you have it. But why they use medication is it changes brain chemistry.
Right.
But if we know your brain chemistry, we can prescribe activity, diet, hobbies, all sorts of stuff. So for me, for example, I'll give you how my program works, is I have high dopamine, which means I'm ADD and I love to move about 90 miles an hour and hate sleep. But it also means that when I get stressed out, what's interesting is my opinions become statements of facts. I get more right. I have no patience, and listening skills go down the toilet, which works out really well when you go home and ask your wife, how was your day today? And you don't care. I mean, it doesn't work too well. But I know, and what we teach people is before I get to that point, my ciliary muscle will twitch, my jaw will tighten, my carotids fill up. That's saying you're going to have too much dopamine. So in my head, I go CBS. What's that mean? Chicken, beans, and salad. Why? That doesn't produce dopamine. Number two, change your music from Led Zeppelin to praise and worship or something, because you'd love to crank it. And then I'm a compulsive exerciser, so otherwise it would be walk around the block. But for me, since I do that so much, I just go down in my workshop for a couple of minutes and do a little wood carving or wood burning. And I go up, and when I ask my wife how her day was, I can really care. So that's easy. It's easy stuff, but you got to know what's going on to be able to prescribe that. Now I'm going to give you a politically incorrect statement because I come from a political family. People ask me, how do you feel about medication? You got to stay through all three of these. I consult with Novartis. I consult with Eli Lilly. I consult with Big Pharma. I believe it is unethical to prescribe any medication for any reason that lifestyle won't help improve. Okay? Why? Antihypertensives increase your risk for dementia. Antidepressants increase your risk for dementia. Sleeping pills increase your risk for dementia. And then so you stayed with me on that one. My third point is, but if you have any of those, please take the medication until we can help be able to minimize it so that you don't run into dementia. That's our position. And we very much believe that it's important for people to be able to create a lifestyle that won't later on put them into the dementia levels. If you've seen the numbers of dementia and where it's going in the future, it's absolutely astronomical. And we need to prevent it because we kind of misuse. So that's how it works. There's classes, and we offer one-on-ones anytime a person wants to.
Okay.
We encourage one-on-ones, but it's up to the individual. Our staff are all either nurses or masters and above counseling sorts of level.
Commissioner Van Doren.
A lot of information to absorb quickly, but I appreciate Commissioner Collins' comments, being at the convention and having the time to look at it and being a former police chief. But even over on top of that, I mean, as we've talked about this, I've been talking with Administrator Murphy, and I think all of us know that Administrator Murphy spends some time, I think monthly, talking with all the other administrators on a call, and a number of them have signed up for this program, and it's pretty impressive what she's heard from those other administrators on the effectiveness of this program. So, and you may want to cover that a little bit with us, Kim, but sitting here and looking at it and trying to understand it today, it's nice to have those kind of comments from people that know people that are involved. It has worked very positively.
We don't market. We let our prior clients recommend us. I get so turned off on marketing because I'm in the healthcare field and I see everything promising everything from diet and everything else. It's the biggest scam you've seen. So we usually just say, talk to people that work with us. That's the biggest sales thing we can do.
I came from a restaurant family and my mother used to say, the best advertisement you can get is word of mouth.
Exactly.
Any other comments? Commissioner Simpson?
More of a question. Next steps would be what? I assume the administrator's office would review the information and provide some sort of recommendation, but
The next item on the agenda is actually an action request form where I will talk about some of the financial aspects and how this program could be funded, what a 2025 pilot program would look like, and what that might look like going into the future. But I don't know if you have any other questions for Dr. Robertson at this point before we get to that.
I would just offer one comment then before we move on to our next action item. My district is conservative, rural. These are the kinds of things that they look at and say, there you go, typical governmental waste. I have a different perspective. My wife was a peds ICU nurse at Mott Children's Hospital for 28 years. People that are at the ICU with their children don't want to be there. Nobody ever wants to be at the ICU with their kids. I look at our department heads here and our elected officials. People aren't excited about going in and seeing our treasurer to pay their taxes. People aren't excited about having to interact with the Department on Aging, et cetera, et cetera. Certainly not law enforcement or the prosecutor. And those are the times of the greatest tension for people in their lives, which means our employees are in the toughest spot, the hardest time. And I just think we'd be remiss in not exploring this as an option to help, support them from the stress their job naturally exposes them to.
You're singing on a page that I do is we have offered programs that for some reason people don't want to be there. And when we go in, there's people that don't want to be there. We also will find people joining in at the second session or the third session because they didn't trust us. And I don't blame them. I may not be the first one to sign up, but after they've heard a little bit. And so when we look at it in law enforcement, we average 86% participation.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And government executives, it's 100%, but there's so much peer pressure. So, they say, you got to go. So, but yeah, at any rate, we know dispatch and corrections aren't as high. They're in the 70s. But we still feel good about that.
Sure.
Not good enough though.
Well, thank you. I think we're going to move on.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
You bet. Thank you for coming. Administrator Murphy, you want to bring forward the request?
I do. I want to step back for just a second. For those of you who have not had an opportunity did not have an opportunity to attend the Criminal Justice Committee meeting, it is recorded. I would encourage you to go back and take a look at it because we did have a number of department heads come forward at that meeting and talk about how they felt about this program. And I know we focus a lot on law enforcement in this particular category, but really there's any county department has experienced their own levels of stress with what they're doing. You could be in the clerk's office and handling an election and get death threats in your home because of the way that they think that the polling place is set up. You could be with the ME's office and be an MEI on a death scene or multiple death scenes. You can be in any office and have a different type of stress that you're dealing with. None of it is good for our brains or our bodies. And so this is an opportunity when we heard Dr. Robertson talking at the MAC conference, and I did talk with Al to find out what they did in Kent County and Ottawa County and what that looked like for them. And he is very excited about the program and is working with Blue Cross to maybe someday convince them that being part of this program would also help reduce our insurance rates directly rather than indirectly through the result of healthier employees. As we look forward at this proposal, the action item today is to consider a 2025 pilot program. There would be 2 cohorts. For those of you that aren't familiar with a cohort, it means 2 different groups of individuals going forward at 2 different times. The first cohort would include the command staff at the sheriff's office, the leadership at Maurice Spear campus, and 3 individuals out of the administrator's office. That's a total of 24 individuals. The cost for that particular cohort would be about $15,250 to go through the first year. Moving forward, we also want you to consider cohort number 2. Cohort number 2 is approximately 40 individuals. And when I say approximately with these numbers, it's because this is not something that is being mandated. It is on a volunteer basis. And this particular cohort includes every single department head and their backup person. So if we were to go through this program in the first year, you will have tackled the leadership of all of the county departments. And at that point, we could analyze, was there a benefit? Are we recognizing that this is something that we would want to move on to the rest of the staff? If that is the case, we would talk about it a little bit later in 2025 as we're looking at our budget and consider what that looks like. We do have some pricing information of what that could look like with the rest of our employees. But until we get through this first rollout, I would prefer not to really get into all that detail, because I think that as the legislative body and responsible for the county's finances, you're going to want to make sure that there was a benefit to the expenditure. The question becomes, well, where is this funded? Because it wasn't something that you included in the budget, Kim. Well, we can do that through, most of you are aware that our insurance carrier for our liability, property, vehicle, and all those other insurances is Michigan Municipal Risk Management Authority, or MMRMA. They are our risk management agency. Once a year, we receive something called a net asset distribution, which comes back. It is not a budgeted amount of money coming back into the county. It comes back and ultimately ends up back in general fund, which then ultimately ends up back in our fund balance as an unexpended amount of funds coming back into the county. This averages about $200,000 on an annual basis over the last few years. There's no reason to expect that that amount would change. So my proposal is these 2 cohorts are going to cost approximately $45,250. I would argue that this is a risk mitigation potential project, if you would, and that the funding would come from those net asset distributions. So the recommendation that is before you today is to recommend the Board of Commissioners authorize moving forward with the 2025 pilot program through Robertson Research Institute in the total amount of $45,250.
Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Commissioner Simpson.
Kim, my only question really is that seems too small. The pilot program in 2025 affecting about 45 or so people, or 40 people in the cohort 2 and about 24 in cohort 1. You've got about 500-ish employees countywide. Is it just the logistics of rolling out the program that we would take such a small sample size, or why?
No, we could.
Because my druthers would be to push this out at a much larger scale than what you're suggesting.
I think part of that would be, as our discussions with Dr. Robertson, is to look at his availability in the calendar. Also, quite honestly, we thought that we would want to roll out a pilot to see if it was actually working. And then it was important that the leadership of the county go through the program so that then once they're through it, they can guide the remaining individuals within their department.
On that point, though, we're talking about data. And the more data sets you have, the clearer picture you typically get. And more, we've talked a little bit through that presentation about the lenses in which we view things. And the leadership lens is considerably different than the non-leadership lens. And then if you look to have impact, true impact across the board to see what, whether it's beneficial or not, you're going to want to see it from all those different sectors. And I'm not sure this is robust enough to be able to do that, to get a good data set. That's part of the reason why I'm saying maybe this is too small of a sample size. You have to roll out, I understand.
Please come to the microphone so we can hear you. Dr. Robertson, can you please come to the microphone?
If you roll out to the whole county, I'll just use the Kent County, their average cost per person drops to $425. Because for us, we've got one place to go, we can handle that, et cetera. So when you get over that threshold, our pilots, we keep at our full retail per se. And then if you go to a county, we discount as much as possible. We're a Michigan-based company, so we don't have to pay for flights and all of that. And we come down as much as we can to be able to get that, because we too want to provide the data as well as the service. So just FYI to think about, if you're talking about 500 people, it's considerably less.
Thank you. Just one comment. I would not support going beyond the prototype that we're rolling out here. It's been well vetted by the administrator. It's her plan. I think there's good buy-in with our department heads for what it's worth. Commissioner Collins?
I just want to clarify something that may have been misunderstood. Doctor, you made a statement a little while ago that dispatch and patrol are not as high. You did not mean that the stress levels are not as high.
No.
Okay.
No, and two things, by the way, going back to that statement on the cost, if you moved forward, it doesn't matter. If you did this one, we will still pass that savings on. So don't think that you need to do it all at one time. So waiting is not a problem. Dispatch and corrections are very tough jobs. And I think it's not only the job that they do, but the culture that they have created. That was politically incorrect, wasn't it? That perpetuates some of that issue. And it's something that has to be addressed as far as a culture.
Commissioner Van Dorn?
Yeah, I concur with Commissioner Martis is that, everything I've heard has been very positive, but this is a new program for Lenawee County, and I think it's just a lot of information, a lot of things going on, and I think the size of the cohort that we're talking about works perfectly to take a look at. And I mean, we look at the results after it comes in, and we may want to increase it at that time, but at least we'll have some data there.
Any other comments? We have a motion and a second on the floor. Administrator Murphy?
In response to Commissioner Simpson's question, though, I did have those discussions of what that cost would look like if we were to move forward. And we do have a potential 2026 rollout plan that would include the remainder of the employees in the county and a 3-year actual plan. As you heard in the presentation, usually a 1-year plan, you get your information, you have some of your training classes and stuff. To really have that set in, you need to kind of have at least 3 years of that support to make sure that you're getting the full benefit that's being desired. So if we were to sign on, and this is something you can kind of keep in the back of your head, if we were to sign on for a 3-year program, anticipating all of employees participating, which keep in mind, we will not get 100% participation, but based on some assumptions of the number of employees that we would have included, we would be looking at an annual cost of approximately $46,000 for first responders, which are the law enforcement. And for the remaining county employees, we are looking at a total of about $83,250. That means annually $129,250 to roll a plan out over a 3-year period for all county employees in cohorts that would be developed based not only after we get through the leadership, but based on departments with similar servicing to be able to quantify the training that is needed and be able to use Dr. Robertson's team in the best way possible. That $129,250 is still well within the reimbursement rate that we do get back from MMRMA on an annual basis. So I just want to make sure that you had that complete picture as we have previously discussed.
Thank you. Commissioner Van Dorn?
So then my question is because, I mean, you can cancel this at any time. Once we get into it, we start talking to people. I think I heard that, but going back to the pricing that you're talking about, if we start with the program that you have here, are those numbers the same? If we decide at that particular time, the 3-year program, or would it be more cost effective to say you want to start that way, I guess?
Dr. Robertson, my understanding is that those rates, as long as we're continuing as a client, would be valid.
Well, first of all, I think it's important that you don't start them all at once because it's a stress on your organization, it's a stress on ours. So we usually do cohorts, and cohorts would be, what are your highest risk people first? And then you keep building them, and then you onboard any new employees quickly, so that by the time you get into your program that is going to be kind of the maintenance program, we've done statistics that we go to your leadership and say, here are the major problems. And so we don't just create, I'm in concierge medicine, so we do concierge for you guys. So we'd say, well, anxiety is one, compulsion is one, or whatever. And we determine that and set out a strategy. When you look at it, the one thing that and again, I'm not the financial guy, I think those numbers were based upon the original numbers of 500 and 750, or did he already discount those down?
I believe those are discounted
Okay.
down.
So that's a good
Mhm.
number then, because our financial guy, I'm incompetent at that.
So it's the same if we use this amount or we doubled the amount.
Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Stimson.
Sorry, this is the first that I've had an opportunity to see any of this, so I have a lot of questions, which is why I'm asking, and apologize for taking up that time. My question comes back around to that initial pilot program.
Mhm.
Does that seem to be at least addressing all of the high-risk people? Because it doesn't seem, again, to be casting, we're talking about $80,000 between this pilot group and the entire county being in part of the program, which is less than 60% of the rebate we get on our risk mitigation. So the amount of money is significant, but not also something that I wouldn't say is not a great investment into our employees. So it's going to assist in hiring practices. It's going to assist in retention rates. It's going to assist in all of those things that cause us inefficiencies. My question comes back around to, it seems a little light in the pilot program. Are we capturing enough of the people to really get a good data set to understand the program? And I understand people are going to be against it, but I don't understand the logic of where that set came from. It was never explained to me before. I wasn't part of any of those conversations.
So this particular group was brought forward. Number one, this is a brand new program in Lenawee County. And quite frankly, it's newer to the counties in the state of Michigan. There's only a few other counties that are actually doing this. And they're quite frankly, they're the result of being in Ottawa and then going to Kent and seeing the results of that. Because this is new and different, we took a look at what would make the most amount of sense potentially from creating an environment with our staff, as well as creating something that might be palatable for the commissioners on cost. And so when we looked at it, we looked at the fact that where would we start? Would we start within one department? Do we start with like departments? There was a lot of conversation about how this could potentially be put together. In the end, we talked about the fact that it's kind of difficult for, if we do not involve leadership to begin with, for the leadership to be able to be supportive of the staff that they have below them as they move forward. And because it is new and different, and although there have been successes in other counties, we wanted to be able to say, okay, we piloted this program. It does or does not appear to be working, and then we could roll it out to the remaining members of the county. It would have to be done in cohorts. So even if, say, the commission said, let's just roll this out to everybody, we want to move forward with this program, we're willing to move forward with all county employees, we would still need to develop what that cohort system looked like. And there would still be priorities. And this priority is based on not necessarily those that exhibit the most amount of stress, because quite frankly, I think that's an unfair statement. I think that all employees have levels of stress, whether it's coming from home, from work, or from other sources. But we wanted the leadership in some of these major departments to be able to go through that first and then immediately roll it out to the other departments and their seconds. So that's really as simplistic as it was. But I'm not saying that based on what I've seen and what I've heard, I think this is going to be a beneficial program. I think we are going to see, as long as employees participate and they become invested in the program and they want to be a success. I think much like a few years ago when the commissioners mandated that employees and their spouses receive an annual physical examination. And we have been able to see that our insurance rates have reduced because we have employees that are catching potential health insurance matters at an earlier stage rather than those getting caught at a later stage costing money. I think this program can work very much the same way. And I think that over time, we would see that there's going to be a reduction in some of our health insurance rates as a result of this program also. But it's your comfort level on how quickly we would want to roll it out.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Commissioner Blanco?
Just if it was evident that it was going well, we could always create another cohort just later this year even, correct? We wouldn't have to wait till 2026.
That's correct. And I think we defer to the fact that Dr. Robertson and Administrator Murphy, what's your name? Have already spent a lot of time talking about how to roll this out best. So if there are no other comments, any other comments, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. We move on. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Robertson.
Thank you.
Next issue is a matter of pollution insurance. Administrator Murphy.
I am going to defer to Deputy Elliott as she is handling all this.
Your liability insurance, Michigan Municipal Risk Management Authority, or MMRMA, does not cover pollution insurance. So we go out to CAPNIC every year for a pollution insurance. And your renewal this year is in the amount of $18,245. Now, we recapture some of this from different funds and different offices like airport drain commission, things of that nature. But again, this is just a renewal for your annual pollution insurance in the amount of $18,245.
Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Or
Been moved and seconded. Any questions? Any comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I'll take the next one, Administrator Murphy. This is our regular agreement with MSU Extension. Nothing too controversial, I don't think. I'd entertain a motion to proceed with this request for $157,062 to renew our annual agreement with MSU Extension.
so moved.
Been moved. Is there a second?
Support.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Next issue, we have in a grant request with respect to a juvenile justice grant at the Maurice Spears campus. And it's safe to presume that Deputy Administrator Elliott will discuss this.
Yes, thank you. So in early December of last year, Michigan Department of Health and Human Services opened up a competitive grant for juvenile justice infrastructure. In looking at the criteria for the grant, it would not allow you to apply for a project that you had already allocated funds. So the new build at Maurice Spears campus was ineligible. However, during design for that new build, we had what we called a wish list. We said, let's put everything on the table that we want to accomplish with this expansion. So I went back and I looked at that wish list and we pulled off an area that was highly needed within the current or existing detention. And that is essentially a remodel of the entire hygiene infrastructure. So chases, plumbing, toilets, sinks, things of that nature. To accomplish accessing all those areas, we will have to pull up flooring, kind of be looking at moving at some walls, doors, and things of that nature. So in this project, this would essentially put in all a brand new hygiene infrastructure for your existing detention, as well as doors, toilets, lighting, things of that nature. The request before you is to authorize Administrator Murphy to sign the contract for the grant. Part of that is because of the portal in which MDHHS uses for their grants, which is the eGrams. We are kind of a parent account, and then there's multiple accounts that go underneath that. And so it's at this point, what I'm told is you cannot change that, the authorized user, which is Administrator Murphy. But again, to assign the grant in the amount of approximately $1.3 million and to allocate $500,000 as the county's matching portion to complete this project, which is a total of $1.8 million.
Thank you. Question, presuming we proceed with this, when this is done and the addition is done, what percentage of that facility, new and existing, will have been significantly upgraded over the course of these projects? I mean, I'm not going to hold you to, in general terms, we have done a lot to the existing plus the new addition,
So
right?
that, yeah, this project will hit 18 of the existing 26 beds in current detention. 8 of those beds, though, were part of a remodel back in the mid to late 90s, so they're not in the same age condition as the other beds.
Great. And so with a $500,000, we spring loose another 1.3.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Van Dorn.
So moved, but then I have a,
Okay, is there a second?
Support.
so I think significant improvement even got greater when we had a drain plug up the roof. And so now we're getting the offices done too that weren't planning on doing. So that helped the percentage too, Commissioner Martis.
Yeah, and I'm also aware that Deputy Administrator Elliott has done a ton of work in this regard in helping to procure this money. So other comments or questions? Shannon.
Thank you. Ever so quickly too, to join in that, the director of Marie Spear Campus, Director Weaver, has been doing a lot of work with his staff in the interior of open unit as well. So when you enter the boys' wings, there is new carpeting. It looks much more homier, if you will, than it has in the past. So they are taking strides on their own end to build into their budgets every year to continue to kind of refresh, if you will, certain locations. And as Commissioner Van Doren said, we did have a leak that sprung into the administration building and to all the offices, as well as moving into the girls' wing, as well as some of the cafeteria. So we are currently working on that remediation and remodel for those areas. So when this is all completed, it will look like it will be a significant amount of Marie Spear Campus that has been touched, affected in some way, shape, or form.
Actually, if we add up the money received from ARPA and the other grant and sum all the money that we're putting in the facility, well over 20 million, very little of it has actually come from within the county, except through our taxes that we all pay individually.
Correct.
So very good. Is there any other questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Shannon, in particular for your hard work on this. Now we're going to move to committee referrals and recommendations. The first is we have a recommendation for some design work for the airport runway ID light project. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Support.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Administrator Murphy, anything you need to add to this?
Not unless there's any questions. This is to utilize some of the funding that we have available to us. It will be going away at the end of February. And so this is a project that we kind of brought forward. It was already on the 10-year capital plan for the airport. Approving this will help pay for the design, and then there will be a second portion of it, which is the actual construction phase. So if the design part is approved, we will be able to go out in bids and finalize the construction portion of the project.
Super. We have a motion, right? It's already been moved and seconded. Yeah. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next, we have a request for furniture, fixtures, and equipment at the Maurice Spears campus. It should be clean in your notes there. This has been competitively bid and procured. It's been go through physical resources already. So it's all been vetted. Well, yeah, it's a committee referral, obviously. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Support.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And finally, we have a request for the mobile data terminal upgrade for law enforcement vehicles for the amount of $35,588. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Commissioner Collins.
I think it needs to be known that some of that funding will return back to the county because these repairs go on every patrol vehicle in Lenawee County. So those agencies using it will be reimbursing the county.
Thank you. Any other, Commissioner Van Dorn?
So each unit helps participate at the same amount?
That's correct.
Okay.
Anything else? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Next, we have to go into a closed session. Is there a motion to enter into closed session?
So moved.
Is there support? Supported. Now roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Van Doren,
Yes.
Commissioner Ungst,
Yes.
Commissioner Blanco,
Yes.
Commissioner Collins,
Yes, have we stated the reason for which we're going into closed session?
Yeah.
Yeah, I question that too, Mr. Murphy.
The reason is pursuant to Open Meetings Act 15.268, Section 8D, acquisition of real estate.
There you go. I said yes.
Okay,
Commissioner Daly,
Yes.
Commissioner Krasny,
yes.
Commissioner Martis,
Yes.
Commissioner Stimson, Commissioner Tillotson,
Yes.
9 yeas.
Okay, we will now move into closed session. The public's free to stay.
Okay.
It keeps doing this. There we go.
Thank you. Commissioner Daly has the medical appointment that he needs to go to, so he will be leaving early. I would entertain a motion to exit executive session.
So moved.
Support, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Blanco,
Yes.
Commissioner Collins, Commissioner Daly,
Yes.
Commissioner Krasny,
Yes.
Commissioner Martis.
Yes.
Commissioner Stimson, Commissioner Tilton,
Yes.
Commissioner Van Doren,
Yes.
Commissioner Ungst,
Yes.
9 yeas.
Thank you. Is there any other ways and means business? Any additional items for the consent agenda? Any public comment? See no public comment. Any commissioner comment? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Oh, or,
All in favor signify by saying aye.
aye.
All opposed, same sign. Meeting adjourned.